Hey guys, first regards in here, I'll be talking about the voice pack DLC controversy for Space Marine 2 Patch 12, and to talk about this with me, I have brought on Jefficus. Now Jeff, we have talked a couple times about this before, but recently Saber came out and said they are giving full refunds for everybody who bought the voice pack DLCs on top of making it free for everybody. So what do you think about this? It's like a good idea from Saber. Personally, I think this is like the best response they possibly could have done. I think the community took a big W.
Yeah, I think this is a huge W as well. I think it's also important to make the distinction that these are the Focus community managers who are announcing this. So, of course, Focus is Saber's publisher in this case. I'm really happy that they decided not to just apologize via some Discord post or some Reddit post somewhere, and they're actually doing something that's extremely pro consumer. I've only ever seen things like this happen in like gotcha game spaces where a developer will make an oopsie and then they'll basically do something that's not really in the best interest monetarily for the company, basically just to generate some goodwill for the community. And I think that that's exactly what this move is going to do. It's going to generate a lot of goodwill for the community. And I think that we're going to see some higher quality DLC packs in the future. There's an expectation now that if they're going to sell us something, they are going to try their best to make the best quality product that they possibly can.
I would definitely agree with that, that any future DLC we get will be much higher quality. They actually commented a couple times on that, saying the last time they launched a DLC, it didn't go very well, and they were like having multiple meetings over this before this initial statement anyways, or I should say this final statement on the DLC pack controversy. And the fact that they decided to make this actually like free for everybody is a pretty huge deal. This
Oh yeah.
DLC felt like a free DLC anyways, to be entirely honest. I am kind of curious to like know what the actual like sales data was for this DLC pack that they actually made it free, because like they might have took a pretty big hit for this for all we know. But I imagine any upcoming DLC we have, especially for the voice packs, because we do know there are White Scars and Raven Guard coming eventually, the voice pack will probably be a much higher quality than what we got here.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have to try to make it higher quality, right? Like they're probably going to. We made a great example in the last video where we talked about Warhammer 40k Dark Tide and how whenever they release a class in that game, it's not that much more expensive than what Saber and Focus were asking for the voice packs, and these were just cosmetic DLCs that came with 3 different head options and 3 different voice options with very minimal voice lines being recorded for each option. With Dark Tide, you've got to get 3 different voice actors for males, 3 different voice actors for females, and then you've got to get the entire cast back for every other class in the game and every other character in the game, each class having 6 different voice actors voicing lines at the minimum, because I think Ogren actually has there's 4, but it's only male. So regardless, you've got to get everyone back, and so the cost of that would be significantly higher than the cost of just hiring 3 voice actors. I'm sure that there's language optimization they have to do, so they have to hire
Oh,
more than that.
definitely.
They got to do Spanish, Portuguese, French, German, etc., etc. But compare that to Dark Tide, and you compare the prices, and it just doesn't, or it didn't make any sense. It wasn't adding up in my head at all. So I'm really glad that they're pulling back here a little bit. And again, I'm just really proud of the community for spotlighting this, because people could have totally just bent over and took the World of Warcraft approach after the Celestial Steed released back in a Cataclysm like 20 years ago and just accepted the slop of microtransactions for, what they were. And now you look at that game, it's primarily microtransactions, which is not really what I want to see for the Space Marine franchise.
This makes me wonder what we're going to get for monetization in Space Marine 3, because I feel like this was them like dipping their toe to like see how the community would react. But on top of that, when we deal with communities like this and there's like a big uproar over a DLC, not all like DLC controversies are entirely justified in my opinion, but like this one was pretty egregious, and I saw some people say like, oh, we should just completely ignore this. This is totally fine. You guys are like making a big deal out of it. But the thing is, like companies, their primary objective is the bottom line. If you as a consumer tell them like this is what I will accept, this is what I will not accept, this isn't even like a gameplay related thing. This is not a matter of balance like you would see in Helldivers 2 or something like that, where the community like freaks out over something being too difficult. This was a matter of like, this felt not worth my money. And when something feels like that in a game, when multiple people have the same reaction to a DLC pack coming out, and they're like, this is just not worth the money, and you let a company know that, obviously they'll change it. In this case, it is now just free. So like, if we had all just bent over and just like, oh, this is totally fine, they would have put out more like this. They probably would have had the White Scars and Raven Guard be exactly the same. So like, it is important to make your voices heard. Obviously not all controversies are equal, but like this one was pretty egregious, and this was probably the biggest controversy the game has had since launch, which is kind of funny to think about considering it's just a $5 DLC pack. You know, regardless of whether or not it's like $5 or $30, $40, money is money, and the things you buy should be worth the amount they're being, you know, put up for. The things you buy should be worth the money you invest in them. And I think this was a huge W for the community, because without this, we would probably just get ripped off more.
Absolutely. And I think that there are times when, and you know, both you and I do it as YouTubers. We promote this game all the time because we love it. We just genuinely love this game. And there are times though where you've got to check the developers, or you got to check the publisher. And I think that this was just kind of a clear scenario where the community got together and was like, nah, guys, this is a little too much, especially considering that we don't get the content release cadence in Space Marine 2 to really justify more DLC being sold to us. At least I don't think so. It's a whole completely different story when there's a microtransaction store in a game, but you're getting content like every 2 weeks or something crazy like that, right? Like a true live service.
Yeah.
And I know that the term live service is kind of a buzzword in the Space Marine 2 community, but this game is a live service game. We do support the game financially every year with the annual passes, and then we also now have the DLCs that we support the game with. And it's a really terrible live service game because we get content so slowly, and it really is just drip fed to us. So just because it's a terrible live service game does not mean that it isn't a live service game, because it totally is.
Yeah, Saber's pretty adamant the game is not live service. Now, on the note of DLC controversies in Space Marine 2 and like how the community feels about monetization in general, I do think that the game is overall very consumer friendly. Like, we get classes for free that have just as much depth as a base game class would. Every operation feels equal, if not better in quality, to the base game operations we had. Maybe some of their objectives suck, but like as far as the overall just like scale of the operations, they feel the same. Some of them are even better because you have stuff like the Mutalith Vortex Beast or Trigon that are really only equivalent to stuff like the Hive Tyrant, and they kind of like blow maps like Ballistic Engine out of the water. And like you said, you know, I love Space Marine 2. I would not play it if I did not. There are better games to play, in my opinion, if you're not a fan of 40k, or if you're just looking for like, you know, a different experience beyond pure customization and stuff like that, and even just like content creation. But as far as the DLC controversies in this game have gone so far, I do feel like the community is occasionally too hard on Saber, where like a lot of the dumb shit we hear is from the focus, you know, community managers and stuff like that. But as far as their response to this, I think this was totally justified. This is the one where I was like, yeah, that is a cash grab. And like, having a cash grab for $5 is pretty intense, but it was a pretty egregious quality control error, in my opinion.
Yeah, FTG, I actually have a question for you. What do you think Focus is going to try to do for Space Marine 3? Like, do you think they're going to adapt a more aggressive microtransaction or DLC pricing model to try to make Space Marine 3 more closer to a live service? Or how do you think they're going to treat that?
I think they'll probably monetize it more. You know, by the time Space Marine 3 comes out, it's gonna be like 2029. The game is confirmed to have a 4-year dev cycle. So who knows what the gaming landscape's gonna look like in a few years, but either way, I think players might be more receptive to that by that time period, because even now, like, live service may have burned a lot of people, but, we have games like Helldivers where like people are just way more accepting of it. If they build it from the ground up to support that monetization scheme and give you a proper content drop, I think players would be fine with it. All they'd have to do is like add in like any free option in the game at all to like give people an opportunity to buy the stuff without just spending real
Right.
money. Because a lot of the times, like those systems in games like super credits, they're not like very time efficient. You're better off just getting a job somewhere else and working that time period and then buying the DLC with that earned money. But for a lot of people, gaming is their hobby and they want to keep their hobby isolated, and giving them that opportunity to just like play the game they like and have a bit of fun while they're grinding for stuff that might cost real money. It might be more time efficient to spend on. It's just a better opportunity for them to play the game. It makes them feel better about continuing to play the game. They also feel less ripped off in general. So I do think we might see that in Space Marine 3, especially since we just saw Fat Shark basically go out with Darktide and try to like make a Helldivers 2 mode. I think Helldivers 2 has done a lot of good for horde shooters in general. Maybe not in terms of like how much some communities like to complain, but in terms of like the price modeling for games and how the genre is like evolving in the horde shooter genre, I think we're probably going to see a lot of that over in Space Marine 3 as well.
Yeah, I think that they've really innovated on the traditional gameplay formula of something like Left 4 Dead 2 or something.
The monetization in Space Marine 3 will almost certainly be more egregious than it is in Space Marine 2, but hopefully that means the game itself will have far more regular content drops, because Space Marine 2 was a shocking success. They did not set up the initial launch of the game to support the amount of players it was actually going to wind up getting. It had sold like 2 million copies in the first day or so, like, first week, and then like 4 million by the end of the first month, which is absurd. And all of those players, or a lot of those players, are going to come back for Space Marine 3, so they know they have like this massive launch on their hands this time, whereas Space Marine 2 was not anything like that for them. That's like, a moderate success. So I think they're gonna definitely double down on like player retention there and try to monetize it in some way, or like give them a proper roadmap that's like more equivalent to Space Marine 2's Year 2, or like probably far better. At least that's what I hope.
Yeah, that's kind of what I hope as well, and I could definitely see all those things happening. We kind of see features being tested in some of Saber's other games, such as Toxic Commando, which I'm kind of excited for. I'm not excited for Toxic Commando. I'm probably not going to play it or touch it at all. But I'm kind of excited that Saber is actually seemingly increasing their scope. And so the more that they do that, the more promising Space Marine 3 begins to really look.
Oh, I definitely agree that Space Marine 3 looks very promising, considering games like Toxic Commando. I mean, we're going to talk about this in a different video at some point, but they're going to be adding vehicles to that game. Having something like that in Space Marine 2, or excuse me, Space Marine 3 would be a pretty cool addition. And Saber is a company that makes games like all the damn time. It is pretty ridiculous. I'm curious to see how much how much of their dev team is basically just, or excuse me, their entire company is moved towards Space Marine 3 when
Right,
that
yeah.
comes out, compared to like Space Marine 2, because Space Marine 2 is currently like being worked on by a skeleton crew effectively, compared to the original team. The original team has moved on, or are likely working on Space Marine 3 currently. But we see releases like Toxic Commando, an upcoming John Wick game, and hopefully those games perform well, and we can probably look to those to some extent to see how they're going to try to monetize Space Marine 3, or like what kind of content we can expect. But I imagine Space Marine 3 is going to be their like main crescendo, or attempt at a crescendo. So I mean, my hopes are high, but yeah, that's my opinion on that one.
Yeah, I think that just based off of how well Space Marine 2 did, even just the initial response to like the story, or kind of the return to form when it comes to returning to that classic style of like old school Xbox 360 kind of video games, like the reception was amazing. I mean, the amount of people that were playing this game on release was nuts. And for a lot of people who are just hopping into Space Marine 2 now, it's so funny because the game is like better than it's ever been before, but it's got like I wouldn't say the lowest amount of players than it has ever had before, but on launch there were just so many freaking people playing. It was crazy.
The reception to Space Marine 2 was massive. I made a whole video on that like last week, but I would also say that the community that's been formed after that has done a really good job of maintaining the game. The game is very much alive. A ton of people are super passionate about it, and I'm glad that they are, because otherwise we wouldn't have had people like properly give us a response to a DLC pack controversy like this and get Saber to actually make a major change. So that's pretty much all I have to say on this one, guys. Jeff, thank you for coming on to talk about this with me. I know we were talking a lot about like the future of Space Marine 3 as well, but I think they're all pretty intertwined. Like what we can expect from Space Marine 3, what we can expect from Space Marine 2 in the future, what controversies like this can teach us about how the company's going to respond or like make their DLCs going forward. I think it's a good thing for the community. I think it's a huge win, because I think the game is, honestly, this could affect Space Marine 3. Like they'll look at Space Marine 2's DLC controversy and be like,
Yes.
we don't want to deal with that ever again, because this is our major release, and the game might just be more consumer friendly as a result of this. So a great job, community. That's what I have to say on that one. And Jeff, you have any final thoughts?
Again, just huge W for Focus and Saber, and huge W for the community.
All right, guys, that is all from us, and thank you for watching. If you like content like this, subscribe for more, and subscribe to Jefficus. And thank you once again, Jeff, for coming on and talking about this with me. Take it easy, guys. Bye.
The Emperor protects.